For years, NASA has been devoted to discovering the reality of extraterrestrial life. Numerous researchers speculate that Mars, being relatively close, could be the location where this life may exist. It is widely speculated that this planet could have been inhabited by a civilization that has long since disappeared and which might have flourished similarly to those on Earth. On July 25, 1976, one photograph led many to believe that the theory about this civilization could finally be proven. A NASA scientist was analyzing images of a specific region of Mars known as Cydonia. While studying the images, he noticed something peculiar that caught his attention. Upon closer inspection using a magnifying glass, he discovered a structure in the shape of a human face on the surface of Mars. The structure was huge, measuring approximately a mile wide and showed distinct features such as 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Additionally, there were surrounding structures in the form of pyramids and other unnatural-looking shapes. The following day, NASA held a press conference where they showcased thousands of photos taken from Mars. However, the primary focus of the conference was the face structure, and everyone wanted to know more about it. People speculated that it could be a message from an advanced civilization that no longer existed. They wondered if it was solid like the Great Sphinx or contained chambers like the Great Pyramid. However, NASA quickly dismissed these speculations.
Isn't it peculiar what tricks of light and shadow can do? When we took another picture a few hours later, it all went away. It was just a trick, just the way the light fell on it.
Except that this second photograph does not exist. So, this led us to the question, why is NASA hiding the truth about these photographs? Did NASA find proof of advanced civilization on the Red Planet? During a space subcommittee hearing, a U.S. congressman asked this question directly to the NASA panel.
Can I ask permission for 1 minute for this question? And that is, you have indicated that Mars was totally different thousands of years ago. Is it possible that there was a civilization on Mars thousands of years ago?
So the evidence is that Mars was different billions of years ago, not thousands of years ago.
Well, yes.
There is no evidence that I'm aware of that.
Would you rule that out? See, there's some people. Well, anyway.
I would say that is extremely unlikely.
As technology improved, and with the space race between the US and USSR in full swing, getting close-up photos of Mars became a top priority. In 1965, the Mariner 4 probe flew past Mars and sent back 22 images. While the first images of Mars were exciting, they were also disappointing, revealing no vast cities, canals, or any evidence of an ancient culture. Mars looked like the Moon, harsh, barren, pockmarked by meteors, and completely lifeless. However, as technology continued to improve, the idea of life on Mars became less far-fetched. Although Mars is cold and barren now, it may not have always been the case. In the past, Mars might have had conditions that were more conducive to life. The planet previously had vast oceans of water that flowed into rivers and lakes. It had a thick atmosphere that kept the surface warm, and it even had volcanic activity and a global magnetic field, just like Earth. In short, Mars was once a blue planet with all the ingredients necessary to support life. Based on the analogy with Earth, it is conventionally expected that Mars developed microbial life when it lost its atmosphere. There is even a belief that the development of intelligent life on Mars could have occurred twice as quickly as on Earth, which could have led to the existence of a highly advanced civilization on the planet billions of years prior to human existence on Earth. In 1975, NASA launched 2 spacecraft, Viking 1 and Viking 2, to explore Mars. It was Viking 1 which was able to get a photo of the controversial photo face on Mars. During the planning for the landing site of Viking 2, the Cydonia region was the leading contender. The terrain was flat, the visibility was good, and there were interesting rock formations to explore. However, a few days after the release of the famous Face on Mars photo, Viking 2 ended up landing in a barren rocky region called Utopia Planitia. Some scientists working on the mission complained that this was like landing in the Sahara Desert and expecting to find a garden. This prompted the question of why there was a last-minute change to the landing site. Is there something going on in Cydonia that NASA doesn't want us to see? Usually, monuments are not built in isolation. Just like the pyramids found in Egypt or Central and South America, they were part of sprawling complexes of buildings, town squares, and temples. If an ancient culture living on Mars created a monument of a humanoid head, we would expect to see other structures close by, and that's exactly what we see. There's a cluster of pyramids near the face that people call the city square. Near those is an object nicknamed the Fortress, which appears to be a collapsed pyramid. There's also a formation called the D&M Pyramid, named for NASA imaging scientists Vince Di Pietro and Greg Molinar. The D&M Pyramid is a massive 5-sided, 1.5-mile tall structure, which is 3 times the size of the largest pyramid in Egypt. What's really interesting about the D&M Pyramid is that it's symmetrical around 2 different axes. It's easy to dismiss these findings as nothing more than a coincidence. However, a professional satellite imaging specialist named Errol Torin started looking into it. He worked for the Defense Mapping Agency, and his job was literally to analyze satellite images and decide which objects were natural and which were artificial. He said that all the objects, including the face, were not of natural origin. But the D&M Pyramid really blew his mind. This object's 5-sided shape and bilateral symmetry are unlike any landform seen to date in this solar system. As more photos came back from Mars over the past 50 years, strange objects were discovered in the area. Thousands of images have been collected, and if one looks through them, all sorts of things that look out of place can be found. A mathematical specialist found various relationships between objects in the area. There is an almost perfectly rectangular monolith that stands extremely tall, and another that is over 10 miles high, towering above even the largest aeroplanes. There's also an object called the shipwreck, because it looks like the remains of a boat. One wonders whether it's an ancient craft or the foundation of a structure. In May 2022, the Curiosity rover found a doorway carved into the rock face, and giant tracks on the surface that make one wonder what kind of machine could have made them. Some objects don't look like natural rock formations at all, such as the Martian totem pole, which is very strange and couldn't have been formed by erosion. A picture taken by Curiosity in 2015 shows something hanging onto the cliffs, and there's a dome or the top of a sphere in another image. These structures were famously called glass worms by Arthur C. Clarke, a science fiction writer of 2001, Space Odyssey. In addition, there's an imprint that looks like a valve or a gear, which was taken with the Opportunity's microscopic imager. Could this be the imprint left by the piece of an ancient machine? There's also a saucer-shaped formation or structure that stands out from the surrounding landscape, taken by the Mars Global Surveyor in the year 2000. A blogger named David Martinez made a discovery of a complete settlement on the Red Planet, which he referred to as Biostation Alpha. Martinez's deduction was that this was the upper portion of an underground bunker where Martians could be concealing themselves, similar to covert facilities on Earth. These are just a few of the anomalies found on Mars. In 1993, NASA launched the Mars Observer, the first mission to Mars since the Viking days. Surprisingly, NASA was not planning to include a camera on the mission, but an uproar from the public forced them to include one. The new camera was expected to be good enough to finally put an end to the debate about the face and the pyramids in Cydonia. However, the reality was somewhat different, as the mission encountered technical difficulties shortly after launch. Communication with the spacecraft was lost, but observers took this with a grain of salt. In fact, some claimed they were getting leaked information from NASA insiders. According to the leakers, the Mars Observer was still out there and running just fine. In fact, it was taking pictures of the face and all kinds of other weird objects on Mars. But even if NASA had those pictures, they couldn't show them publicly, especially if they showed the face was an artificial construction. In 2019, retired NASA scientific director Dr. Jim Green made some public statements claiming that it is most likely that the European Space Agency had already discovered evidence of extraterrestrial life on Mars. He summed up the reason why space agencies are hiding it from us. Humanity, as we know it today, is not ready for such information. It will take much longer for humanity to come to terms with the fact that life does exist outside of Earth after all. In August 2012, the rover landed on Mars and began analyzing samples from the planet's surface. NASA scientists expected to find heavily oxidized iron in the soil, which they did. However, they were surprised to discover evidence of a massive nuclear war in the form of xenon-129. Chemical analysis showed that the top layer of Martian soil contains a large amount of this isotope, which is only created by the detonation of nuclear weapons. Over 1,000 nuclear tests have been conducted over 70 years on Earth, and every nuclear explosion leaves behind small traces of xenon-129. The amount of this isotope found in Martian soil is 2.5 times higher than on Earth. Dr. John Brandenburg, a former NASA physicist and well-known Mars researcher, believes that a humanoid civilization lived and died on Mars. He discovered 2 hotspots on Mars, Cydonia Mensa and Galaxius Chaos, where radiation levels are higher than anywhere else, and between those hotspots is Cydonia, the location of the face, the pyramid, and other structures. The dating of the isotopes places the explosions between 150 and 300 million years ago. A nuclear explosion of this magnitude could provide the answer to how Mars lost its atmosphere. There are several theories about who detonated the nuclear weapons, including the possibility that a more advanced civilization destroyed Mars. At the time of the event, the most advanced creatures on Earth were reptiles, and dinosaurs hadn't even evolved yet. It's possible that whoever destroyed Mars ignored reptiles as they posed no threat. Another theory is that intelligent life on Mars reached a level of technology advanced enough to destroy themselves in a nuclear apocalypse, and a small group of these humanoids managed to escape. The Martians that managed to escape could have been our ancestors. Well, that's an intriguing idea to think of. What are your thoughts about this? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Until the next one.